Welcome to Montage Microchurch Network, where we are making disciples by loving Jesus and loving people. This series will explore the letters Paul wrote to churches while he was in prison: Galatians, Ephesians, Philippians, and Colossians. Join us while we wrestle with and apply these amazing letters to our lives.
Over the last couple of weeks, we've been working through some of the most theologically rich territory in all of Philippians. We've talked about humility, what it looks like to think of others more than yourself, to move towards people instead of protecting your own position. And then last week, we talked about working out your salvation, right? Mining that gold and bringing it to the surface, shining like lights and pouring your life out with joy rather than griping about it. And all of that is phenomenal. But I think most of us have had the experience of hearing things that sound great, but then we wonder, what does that actually look like in a real person? And not just theory, not in a sermon, a real human being with a real life who actually lives this way. Well, it's exactly what Paul does in this closing section of chapter 2. He introduces us to two people, Timothy and Epaphroditus. And he holds them up, not as perfect people, but as living, breathing examples of what it looks like when the gospel actually gets worked out in someone's life. These aren't famous names. They're not big platform guys. They're just faithful people who love Jesus and loved others well. And Paul says, pay attention to these guys. Now, remember where Paul is writing from. He's in a Roman prison, chained to a Roman guard, waiting to find out whether he lives or dies. He's not surrounded by comfort or resources or a support staff. What he has are a few faithful people who showed up for him and for the churches he loved. Timothy and Epaphroditus are two of those people. And the way Paul talks about them tells us a lot about what he values and what Jesus values. In a Roman culture that's obsessed with status and self-promotion, and again, that kind of sounds familiar to somebody else's culture, doesn't it? Paul holds up two guys whose greatness is almost entirely invisible to the world. One is known for genuinely caring. The other is known for nearly dying in service to others. Paul says, these are the people that are worth honoring. In verse 19 to 24, Paul says, I have no one else like Timothy who genuinely cares about your welfare. All the others care only for themselves and not for what matters to Jesus Christ. But you know how Timothy has proved himself. Like a son with a father, he has served with me in preaching the good news. Paul, he's going to send Timothy to the Philippians to check on them and then to bring back a report of how they're doing. And the way he describes Timothy is really striking. He says, I have nobody else like him. Everybody else is looking out for themselves. Timothy actually cares about you. Now I want to sit with that for a second because I think we can read past it too quickly. Paul's not saying Timothy is the most gifted guy he knows or the most theologically sharp or the most impressive speaker. He's saying Timothy is the one person that he can point to who genuinely, actually really cares about other people without an agenda of his own behind it. And that's a rare thing. And apparently, even in Paul's circle, it was rare enough to be worthy of calling out specifically. Think about the people in your own life who maybe fit that description. You know, the ones who ask you how you're doing and then actually wait for the real answer to come from you? You know, the ones who show up when things are hard without you having to ask them? The ones who serve quietly without needing anyone to notice? Man, those people are a gift. And according to Paul, that kind of genuine, other-centered love is one of the clearest signs that the gospel is actually doing its work in a person. And then he adds this, Timothy proved himself like a son serving alongside his father. Right? It's not a dramatic moment. It was not one big impressive thing that Timothy did. It was faithfulness over time in the ordinary work day after day. And that's how character gets built. And that's how trust gets earned. This is what it looks like to work out your salvation in real life. John Chrysostom said, do not waste your time looking for spectacular opportunities to serve. Faithfulness in little things is a big thing. And really, that's Timothy in one sentence. He's not spectacular, he's just faithful. And Paul says that kind of person is worth sending across the ancient world because you can trust him completely. And then he shares about Epaphroditus in verse 25 to 30. He says, "Meanwhile, I thought I should send Epaphroditus back to you. He's a true brother, co-worker, and a fellow soldier. He risked his life for the work of Christ. He was ill and almost died, but God had mercy on him." Now, Epaphroditus is a stud in the New Testament that most people don't know. See, the Philippian church sent Epaphroditus to Rome with a financial gift for Paul and to help care for Paul while he was in prison. And while Epaphroditus was there, he got so sick he almost died. And Paul says it plainly. He says he risked his life for the work of Jesus. And what I love about Epaphroditus is that he's not a hero in the way our culture defines a hero, right? He didn't plant 100 churches. He didn't write letters that made it into the Bible. He just showed up, and he was faithful to the assignment that he was given. He gave everything he had to it, and it nearly cost him his life. And Paul holds him up and says, honor people like this. Like when he comes back to you, receive him with great joy. There's something really important in the word honor, and Paul uses it intentionally, right? In Roman culture, honor was reserved for people with status and power and public achievement, right? We tend to honor, famous musicians and famous athletes, but Paul flips that whole script completely. He's saying the people in your community who serve quietly, who pour themselves out without recognition, who show up when it costs them something, those are the people worth honoring. That is the kingdom of Jesus operating completely different from the kingdom of the world. Think about the people in Montage who do that kind of thing. People who open up their homes every week, who bring food, who remember what somebody shared 3 weeks ago and follows up on it. People who pray consistently and faithfully and don't let everybody know. But Jesus knows. And Paul's saying we should make a point of seeing it too. Eugene Peterson says, greatness in the kingdom of God is measured in terms of obedience and service, not success. And when you look at Timothy and Epaphroditus side by side, a pretty clear picture emerges of what a person looks like when the gospel has really taken root in their life. Neither of them is living for their own comfort or reputation. Neither of them is asking what they get out of it. Both of them are genuinely orientated towards other people, towards Jesus, and towards the people Jesus loves. Timothy cares deeply. Epaphroditus gives sacrificially. And together, they paint this beautiful picture of what Paul has been talking about all throughout chapter 2. I mean, remember all the way back in verse 4? Look out not only for your own interests, but also for the interests of others. Well, Timothy and Epaphroditus are not just agreeing with that idea, they're living it out. They are what it looks like when humility gets worked out in an actual human life. They are shining like lights. They are pouring themselves out. And they probably didn't even think of themselves as doing anything particularly remarkable. They were just being faithful to Jesus and the people that Jesus put in front of them. And what's encouraging is that it's available to every single one of us. You don't have to be a big platform guy and be spectacular and big. You just have to care genuinely and show up faithfully, right? Show up in Montage, show up in the Flathead Valley, show up in your home, in your neighborhood, your workplace, show up in your school. That kind of life, faithful, serving, giving, that's a phenomenal witness to the reality of Jesus. So here's what I want to leave you with. Paul ends chapter 2 by pointing us not to a doctrine or a principle, but to these two people. And I think it's intentional because the gospel, it was never meant to stay just in our heads. It was always meant to show up through our lives, in our relationships, in the way we treat the people who are right in front of us. So let me ask you something to carry into this week. Who is your Timothy? The person in your life who models genuine, other-centered love without an agenda. Will you tell them? Thank them? Honor them? Let them know what their faithfulness really means to you? And who's your Epaphroditus? The person who has poured themselves out quietly in service and probably rarely hear anyone say thank you for it. Honor them. Say thank you. See them in the way that Paul saw Epaphroditus. And then ask yourself on the other side of that coin, am I being a Timothy? Am I being an Epaphroditus? Right? Not perfectly, not impressively, just faithfully. Because this is what working out your salvation actually looks like when it gets all the way to the surface of our lives. So this week, we're going to be discussing these questions. Number 1, do you find yourself genuinely caring about others, or do you tend to look out more for your own interests? Number 2, who in your spiritual family has been faithfully pouring themselves out without much recognition? Maybe take a minute right now and thank them and honor them. Third, both Timothy and Epaphroditus lived oriented towards others, not asking what they get out of it. So maybe what is one relationship or situation that you're in life right now where Jesus might be calling you to stop asking what you get out of it and to just show up faithfully for someone else? And last, this week, I want to challenge you to pick one person outside of our spiritual family, a neighbor, a coworker, a classmate, something like that. And I want you to do one specific and intentional thing to genuinely care and serve them in the way that Timothy cared for the Philippians and Epaphroditus was caring for Paul. And then when we come back next week, I want you to be able to share what happened when you did that. Okay? Because remember, we don't go to church. We are the church. So let's go and be the church. I love you guys.
Thank you for watching. If you would like more content, to connect with us, or to explore more of who we are as a network, visit montagemicro.church.